So could you talk a little bit more about maybe just a glimpse under the hood of things? But there are a lot of different ways that that fulfillment can be executed. But some of the ways that Clarity has really played chess with where we've sort of placed our assets to make sure not only do we execute in good times at a very high level, but in really challenging times, we've sort of mitigated the likelihood of risk. I wonder if you could maybe speak to some of those things that are really near and dear to Clarity's heart.
Yeah, I think, as we think about experience in the space, and obviously years of experience now executing against this, if you think about, what are sort of the important criteria to really make some decisions around how to best proceed. And if you're an organization, you're a healthcare organization, and everyone has the same requirements around getting out communications in and around the same time period, right? What are the things that we think about as sort of criteria to make that judgment? So first and foremost, and I'll take them as they're kind of coming to mind, but I think a criteria that's that was a differentiator for a while, Drew, but now is honestly table stakes. Is what is, if you're looking at prospective partners to help navigate things like open enrollment, security and compliance are critical. It used to be the advent of, well, this is really important. How are we going to handle it? What is this high trust? I can't underscore enough that whomever health plans are working with, and this is where Clarity's chose to make these investments in play, you need to have a culture around security and compliance. And then that's why for us, our singular focus has been on healthcare. So we're not distracted by other industries that we're serving who have different needs and also competing needs for capacity or for fulfillment requirements.
Mm-hmm.
We're 100% focused in and around the acquisition of data, how to handle that data, how to exchange that data, and how to distribute it in a meaningful way, whether that's electronically in print. So, and that's a really important feature, I think, understanding and sadly, as a byproduct, you're hearing some of the fallouts in the space on a regular basis, where there are some gaps in security posture and compliance. So, that's a critically important thing to consider, when you think about how do you successfully navigate the space with a partner. The other one is kind of part and parcel with that is who are the clients of the prospective partner you're looking to work with. Having a peer network that looks a lot like you is important. So, does your partner, outsource partner, have a diverse set of clients? Are they serving a bunch of different industries? That could be difficult to navigate, particularly in a very, very intense seasonal time like open enrollment, where capacity and need for capacity is going to grow. And having a lot of disparate processes set up within a facility or facilities could be difficult to navigate. So having a partner that's focused within particularly the healthcare industry is critical, and that's going to set the tone, obviously, for how is the distributed network set up? Do you have redundancy within your own facilities to make sure that in December, when volumes are higher than they ever are during the rest of the year, you can weather downtime? Can you have a network of partners where you can send work that is also a secure facility that has the same setups to manage the same communications and get them out? So having scalability and built-in redundancy from a business continuity is really important feature to think about as far as choosing who's going to be there. And then obviously, what are sort of the techniques that are used as it relates to creating and distributing the healthcare communications? Are the downstream partners thinking about the most efficient ways and the most effective ways to get the communications out? One of the things that this past year for Clarity, over the course of the year, we'll have sent out over 85 million ID card packages. That's just one example of a communication. And as people think about open enrollment, there's a huge amount of volume that goes out for it. It's a very critical touch point. A lot of folks are aligned to a 1/1 effective date. So getting that right, getting it timely, and making sure it's impactful is really critical. And being able to think about the different, equipment, technology, and practices to create those effectively, is important. So, how are your partners thinking about those products at scale and being able to produce them at scale? And, for us, you're always judged, on a couple metrics at the end of the year. Was everything timely? Was everything right from a data perspective? Was it secure, and not only secure in data, but secure in how it was produced and sent out, from a receiving perspective? You want to avoid, obviously, anything like misinformation going out to members. So there's a lot of factors that go into thinking about the experience of your partner in the space as it relates to open enrollment. And each of those are criteria that over time, both for myself personally prior to Clarity as well as during these years, you see more and more the need for those factors for serving clients and making their open enrollment successful. And that's why we've continued to reinvest in those areas, to make sure that we're sort of forging a path in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, what I observed being here through the past 4 months is your ability to be nimble, your ability to have control sort of up and down the supply chain of ultimately what ends up being a piece of member correspondence is it's really important, because to expect that the waters are going to be calm is sort of fooling yourself. And so it's not about anticipating every specific adversity that's going to come up in an operating year. It's more about, do you and your team and your equipment and your technologies, have they been built around flexibility to say, we gotta scale this up a little bit, we gotta hire a little bit more. I think it's one of the places that Clarity really weathered well over the past 4 months, was that ability to say, sure, that's a problem that we weren't expecting, but within reason, we've got the levers to adjust, and we can control those levers to help mitigate it as well as possible. Is that a fair kind of assessment of how you look at it from the driver's seat?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to build into the practice that type of flexibility, and knowing that there are going to be changes that happen. A lot of times, those changes either they happen external to your control as a service provider, meaning within the market, our health plans, their enrollments come in differently than expected. The timing and availability of data and eligibility data and enrollment data to them is different than expected. And then, in the moment, as you said, things will happen, right? It's at the end of the day, you're producing millions and millions of communications, and you're dealing with resources, you're dealing with equipment, you're dealing with materials. And so safeguarding and being flexible both in process, and in the way to move work is critical. So for example, it's happened before, it'll happen again. Clarity's built up a redundant network. So we have dedicated resources and equipment and facilities that we own. We also have partnerships that have built a process around our requirements to be able to take work. So whether that's weather, you're dealing with open enrollment across the country, whether that's weather and you're having a closure for a day because of a storm, or a piece of equipment goes down that can't come back online, being able to uniformly have vetted, secure, approved business associates that you can have approved through your client network and have print tested and make sure that they're in that network. From a fail-safe perspective, being able to continue to move work is and keep it going is critical. And that's something that if you think about it, having that continuity is unbelievable, because the window's so short. Our plans, unfortunately, don't have the benefit of having, months to get communications out. They have days. Right. And, making sure that you can get it out timely with the same quality throughout your network is critical. And that takes a huge investment, Drew, and obviously building up those practices and making sure that you can lean on on a distributed network that way is important. So, that's an example where you need to be nimble and you need to be able to be flexible to support that. And it's just one of many across a bunch of different topics.
I mean, it's the depth of the partnership network too. Now I'm compounding a couple things that you've said. So it's one, do we have the capacity sort of, let's say, in-house? Check. And a lot of people could check that box and then say, well, what if there's more equipment goes down or something else is needed due to adverse weather or something else? Do you have the partner network set up? And then you layer onto that, how is the partner networks focus in the healthcare industry? Or how is their compliance? Or how is their high trust certification?
Right.
I think it's one of those where if you lean on a partner, how hard can you lean before it starts to be painful? And the deeper you have that security and compliance, the deeper you have that healthcare DNA up and down your partner chain, your supply chain, et cetera. I think that's when you see a really durable solution, as to one that when the wind speed starts to pick up, they start to shake a little bit.